A broke nurse was forced to marry a dying billionaire. But when he lived, he fell for her. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into the story. I know I said it was the beginning, but this is where things get complicated for Anna. As Grant slowly started to come back to life, the reality of their situation began to sink in. Anna couldn't ignore the fact that this man, once a billionaire CEO, was now entirely dependent on her care. She wasn't sure what to expect next, but she felt something inside her, something unexpected. She found herself looking forward to the brief moments when he would show any sign of awareness. As the days passed, his progress seemed slow but steady, and every small improvement filled Anna with hope. She came in every day, watching Grant closely, making sure he was comfortable, and speaking to him like he could hear her. She spoke about anything, everything. She told him about her life, the struggles she was facing, and sometimes even about her dreams. She talked about the life she imagined living outside of the hospital, about someday opening her own practice, or just having enough money to stop worrying about bills. But she also found herself talking to him about things she hadn't expected. She talked about how lonely she felt, how isolated she sometimes became, even though she was surrounded by people. She'd never let herself get close to anyone before, especially in her line of work. But with Grant, it was different. There was something about him, even in his unconscious state, that made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone. After a few weeks, Grant's physical condition started to improve more rapidly. The nurses noticed it, the doctors noticed it, and Anna couldn't help but feel a surge of pride for the work she was doing. It was no longer just about physical recovery. It was about his mind, his spirit. She had been part of something big. She had helped him return to the world. One afternoon, as she adjusted his pillow, something happened that made her heart race. Grant opened his eyes and looked directly at her. Anna froze, her breath catching in her throat. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. She could hardly believe it. She was used to the machines, the sterile environment, the constant beep of the monitors. But this was real. He was awake. She hadn't expected it to happen so soon. His voice, when he spoke, was weak, barely audible. "Anna?" he whispered, her name. The sound of it in his voice sent a wave of emotion through her. She hadn't realized until that very moment how much she had come to care for him. It wasn't just the responsibility of being his nurse anymore. She was connected to him in a way that she couldn't explain. "Grant," she said, her voice trembling. "Can you hear me?" He nodded, his eyes struggling to focus. "I can," he replied softly. His hand twitched slightly, and Anna instinctively reached out to take it. She had spent weeks taking care of him, and now here he was, awake and conscious. But something about the moment felt fragile. It was as if they both knew that their relationship had changed. It wasn't just about him recovering from his injuries, it was about them both recovering from something deeper. She had been his caregiver, but now, as he woke up, it felt like a new chapter was about to begin for them both. Grant's eyes fluttered again as he adjusted to the reality of being awake. Anna sat beside him, watching closely, feeling a mix of excitement and fear. She knew things wouldn't be the same. His eyes were filled with confusion, and Anna wasn't sure what to say next. It felt like the start of something she wasn't ready for. She hadn't been prepared for how much she would care for him. "You're going to be okay," Anna reassured him, though she wasn't sure if she believed it herself. He seemed to understand, his lips curling into a small smile. "I owe you everything, Anna," he whispered. She shook her head quickly, trying to push the feeling of overwhelming emotion back. "No, you don't owe me anything," she said, trying to maintain some distance. But the truth was, she did care. She cared more than she had ever allowed herself to. And as the days passed and Grant regained more of his strength, she found herself staying later and later at the hospital. The line between nurse and patient was starting to blur. They began talking more, sharing stories about their lives, and in the process, getting to know each other in a way that felt almost too personal. Anna found herself laughing at his jokes, even though she hadn't realized how much she needed to hear laughter. Grant's smile was contagious. But as he began to improve, so did the complexity of their situation. What had started as a purely professional relationship was now something much deeper. They were beginning to rely on each other in ways neither had expected. But even as their bond grew stronger, Anna couldn't ignore the questions that lingered. What would happen when Grant was fully recovered? Would things go back to normal? Could they go back to the way things were before? As the days turned into weeks, Anna knew one thing for sure: she was not prepared for what was coming next. The recovery was far from over, and so was the journey she had embarked on with Grant. But this time, it wasn't just about his healing, it was about both of them. And that, Anna realized, was the real challenge. I know things were complicated before, but now they were about to get even more difficult for Anna and Grant. As he regained his strength, their connection grew stronger, but so did the complications. Anna had been able to compartmentalize her feelings for a while, telling herself that this was just part of her job, but she couldn't deny it any longer. She cared for him, not just as a patient, but as something more. She found herself thinking about him even when she wasn't at work, wondering how he was doing, what he was thinking. Every time she entered his room, she saw the man he was becoming, and it only made her feelings for him grow deeper. Grant had started asking more questions about her life, about her dreams, her past. He was curious, attentive, and it wasn't long before their conversations began to feel less like doctor and patient, and more like two people who had known each other forever. They talked about everything from the things they wanted to do once Grant was fully recovered, to the things they had been through in their lives. She learned about Grant's childhood, how his father had pushed him to be perfect, to always be the best. She told him about her own struggles, how she had to work extra shifts just to make ends meet, how she had taken the job at the hospital because she couldn't afford to do anything else. They were both scarred, in different ways. But there was something about their shared vulnerability that made them feel closer. Anna was no longer just taking care of him. She was starting to care for him in a way that went beyond her professional responsibilities. She had heard of emotional bonds forming between caregivers and patients, but she never thought it would happen to her. As Grant grew stronger, the emotional toll of the situation became more apparent. He was no longer the silent, distant man in the bed. He was awake, aware, and starting to process everything that had happened. Anna had been with him every step of the way, and now she found herself at a crossroads. What was she supposed to do with these feelings? Should she keep them to herself, or was it time to admit the truth? But then there was the guilt. Was it wrong for her to feel this way about a patient, especially one who was so powerful, so far removed from her world? She had never allowed herself to get close to anyone. Her work, her responsibilities, had always come first. But now, everything had changed. One night, after a particularly long shift, Anna sat by Grant's bedside, watching him sleep. It had been one of those rare, quiet moments, just the two of them in the room, with only the sound of the machines and the soft rustle of the sheets. She was lost in thought when she felt Grant's hand on hers. It was a simple gesture, but it was enough to make her heart skip a beat. She looked up at him, and for the first time she saw something in his eyes, something she hadn't seen before. It wasn't just gratitude, it was something deeper, something more intimate. He was looking at her as if he saw her for the first time, as if he understood how much she had done for him, how much she had given up. "Anna," he whispered, his voice soft, almost hesitant. "Thank you." It was such a simple thing to say, but the weight of it made her chest tighten. She swallowed hard, trying to push the feelings that were threatening to overwhelm her back into the depths of her mind. "You don't need to thank me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's my job." He shook his head, his eyes never leaving hers. "It's more than that. You've been with me through everything, even when I was nothing more than a body in a bed. You didn't give up on me. I won't forget that." His words struck her in a way she wasn't prepared for. She had always told herself that she was just doing her job, but now she couldn't help but wonder if that was the only reason she had stayed. She had cared for him. She had put everything she had into his recovery. And now she was starting to realize that it wasn't just about healing his body. It was about something more. "Grant," she started, but she didn't know how to finish the sentence. The truth was, she wasn't sure what to say. She didn't know how to admit that she was starting to feel something for him, something she had never felt for anyone before. The silence between them stretched, and for a moment it felt like the entire world had stopped moving. And then, just as she was about to say something, the door to the room opened, and Dr. Harris stepped in. The moment was broken, but Anna couldn't shake the feeling that things had shifted between them. Grant's recovery wasn't just about his physical healing anymore. It was about the two of them. The lines between nurse and patient were beginning to blur, and Anna wasn't sure where it would lead. What was she supposed to do now? She had never been good at navigating relationships, especially not one like this. But as she looked at Grant, she realized that she couldn't run away from it any longer. Something was happening, something she couldn't ignore. And deep down, she knew that this was just the beginning of a much bigger journey. What would happen next? Only time would tell. But Anna had a feeling that whatever happened, she wasn't going to face it alone. I know things were becoming increasingly complicated, but neither Anna nor Grant could deny the growing tension between them. After that quiet, intimate moment when Grant had thanked her, something inside Anna had shifted. It wasn't just about the physical recovery anymore. She had spent weeks by his side, caring for him, doing everything she could to bring him back to life. But now, with every smile, every quiet conversation, her feelings were becoming impossible to ignore. What started as a professional duty was transforming into something deeper, something more personal. Anna couldn't help but wonder what it meant. She tried to push the thoughts aside, telling herself that she was just doing her job, but it wasn't that simple anymore. Every time she looked at him, she saw more than just the man who had been in a coma for so long. She saw the man who was slowly reclaiming his life, his power, and the man who, with every passing day, seemed to be awakening to something more than just physical recovery. One evening, Anna stayed a little later than usual. The hospital was quieter now, the bustling halls nearly empty. The only sounds were the faint beeping of the monitors and the soft hum of the fluorescent lights. She had been adjusting Grant's IV when he suddenly spoke. His voice was faint but steady. "Anna, I've been thinking." His words hung in the air, and Anna froze for a moment. She set the IV down, turning to look at him. His eyes were open now, fully alert, and there was something in his gaze that made her heart skip a beat. She couldn't tell what it was, but it was more than just gratitude. It felt like something deeper, more meaningful. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly, her voice trembling slightly, though she tried to hide it. Grant took a breath, his expression serious. "I've been thinking about everything you've done for me, how you've stuck by me, even when it seemed like there was no hope. You gave me more than just medical care. You gave me your time, your kindness, your heart." He paused as if gathering his thoughts. Anna felt her chest tighten. She didn't know what to say. She had always tried to keep her emotions in check, but now, it was harder than ever to pretend that this was just about her job. "I just want you to know that I appreciate it," Grant continued, his voice softer now. "I know I wouldn't be here without you. I can't even begin to repay you for everything you've done." Anna felt the weight of his words settle in her heart. She couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. She hadn't done it for repayment. She had done it because it was the right thing to do. But hearing him say it, hearing him acknowledge everything she had done, made her realize just how much she had invested in this. And that wasn't just her job anymore, it was something far more personal. "You don't need to repay me," Anna said, her voice quiet but firm. "I just did what I was supposed to do." But even as she said it, she knew she didn't believe it. She had done more than just what she was supposed to. She had given a part of herself, a part of her heart, to help him. And somewhere along the way, she had fallen for him. The realization hit her like a wave, and for a moment, she felt overwhelmed by it. She had never allowed herself to fall for anyone before. She had always kept her distance, believing that her job was all that mattered. But now, as she looked at Grant, as she saw the man who had once been so distant and cold, she knew that things had changed. And she wasn't sure how to handle it. Grant seemed to sense her hesitation, the uncertainty in her eyes. He reached out, taking her hand gently in his. "Anna," he said softly, his voice almost a whisper, "I know you're worried about me, and I know I've been through a lot. But I'm not the same man I was before. I won't ever be the same." His eyes locked onto hers, and for the first time, she saw something else there, something raw, something vulnerable. "And I don't expect things to be the same between us either. But I want you to know that I feel something too. I can't ignore it anymore." Anna's heart raced as she heard him speak. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected him to say the words that she had been too afraid to admit to herself. She had been holding on to her feelings, afraid of what might happen if she let herself care too much. But now, in the quiet of the hospital room, with the soft beeping of the monitors in the background, it felt like everything had shifted. "Grant," she whispered, her voice faltering as she struggled to find the right words. "I don't know what to say." He smiled gently, the warmth in his eyes making her heart ache. "You don't have to say anything right now," he said softly. I just wanted you to know that I'm grateful, Anna, more than you'll ever know. And in that moment, something inside Anna broke. All the walls she had built around herself, all the barriers she had put up to protect her heart, crumbled. She realized that she didn't need to say anything. She didn't need to explain how she felt, because the truth was already there, in the way they looked at each other, in the way their hands fit together so perfectly. This was only the beginning. The journey they had started together was just beginning to unfold, and Anna didn't know where it would take them. But for the first time in a long time, she was willing to find out. I know that Anna's heart was still racing after everything Grant had said, but the truth was, neither of them could ignore the growing connection between them. What had started as a simple professional relationship had slowly evolved into something deeper, something that neither of them could deny. For weeks, Anna had kept her feelings at bay, telling herself that this was just part of her job, that she was simply doing what was necessary to help a patient recover. But with every passing day, every quiet conversation, every smile from Grant, she couldn't help but wonder if this was something more. And as much as she wanted to ignore it, she knew the truth. She had fallen for him. The man she had been caring for, the man who had been a complete stranger just weeks ago, was now someone she couldn't imagine her life without. As she sat by his bedside that evening watching him sleep peacefully, Anna felt the weight of everything that had happened. She had spent so many days by his side, doing everything she could to help him recover, but now, as Grant's condition continued to improve, she found herself at a crossroads. What did this mean for them? What was she supposed to do now? Would things go back to how they were before, when she was just his nurse? Or was this the beginning of something entirely new? These questions lingered in Anna's mind as she quietly stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting outside, casting a warm glow across the room, and she found herself lost in thought. The truth was, she had never allowed herself to get close to anyone. She had always kept her distance, always focused on her career, never allowing herself to fall in love. But with Grant, everything was different. There was a pull between them, an undeniable chemistry that she couldn't ignore. And now, as she looked out the window, she realized that she was no longer sure of what she wanted. She had always told herself that her job came first, that she couldn't afford to let anything, or anyone, distract her from her goals. But now, she wasn't so sure anymore. A part of her wanted to keep things professional, to maintain the boundaries that she had set for herself, but another part of her wanted more. She wanted the chance to explore whatever this connection was between them, to see where it could lead. Anna's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of Grant's voice. "Anna," he called softly, his voice still weak but full of warmth. She turned around quickly, her heart fluttering in her chest. "I'm right here," she said, walking back over to his bedside. "How are you feeling?" Grant smiled faintly, his eyes still a little hazy, but the gratitude in them was undeniable. "I'm doing better," he said softly, "and I just wanted to thank you again. You've done so much for me, more than I could ever repay." Anna smiled, trying to hide the mix of emotions that were swirling inside her. "It's my job, Grant," she said, her voice a little steadier than she felt. "I'm just glad you're getting better." Grant's hand reached out, his fingers gently brushing against hers. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through her, and she couldn't help but look down at their hands. "No, Anna," he said quietly. "It's more than that. You've been here for me when no one else was. You've made me feel like I'm worth something again. I don't know what I would have done without you." The sincerity in his words left Anna speechless. She had never expected anything like this, and yet here he was, thanking her in ways she never imagined. She felt her heart swell with emotion, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to be vulnerable. "Grant," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I never expected any of this. I never expected to care this much." His eyes softened, and he gently squeezed her hand. "I'm glad you do," he said, "because I care about you, Anna. I care more than I ever thought I could." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. Anna felt a wave of relief wash over her. She wasn't alone in this anymore. The man she had been caring for, the man who had once been a stranger, now felt like someone she could rely on, someone who cared for her as much as she cared for him. It was a moment of pure honesty, of raw emotion, and Anna realized that this was the turning point. They had both been through so much, and yet here they were, standing on the edge of something new. But it wasn't just about the physical recovery anymore. It was about their journey together, about finding something deeper than just a nurse-patient relationship. It was about love, trust, and the possibility of a future together. As Anna looked at Grant, she realized that she was ready to take the next step, to face whatever came next with him by her side. For the first time in a long time, she felt truly at peace with her decisions. The journey they had started together was only just beginning, and Anna knew, without a doubt, that it was going to be something worth fighting for. I know that what was once a simple recovery process had now turned into something far more complex for both Anna and Grant. The air between them was charged with emotions neither of them had expected, and each day, the connection they shared grew stronger. Grant had fully regained his strength, and with it came a new sense of clarity. He was no longer the man lying unconscious in the hospital bed. He was the man who had begun to reclaim his life, his future. But the question that had been lingering in Anna's mind still remained. What was next for them? Could they continue their journey together, now that the lines between professional care and personal feelings had blurred? Anna wasn't sure if she was ready to face what was ahead, but she knew one thing for certain: she couldn't ignore what had grown between them. The spark was undeniable. Their conversations had shifted, becoming deeper and more meaningful. No longer were they just talking about his recovery. They were talking about their dreams, their fears, and their futures. There was a new kind of intimacy between them, one that neither of them could deny. But with that intimacy came the weight of responsibility. Anna had to ask herself, was she ready to risk everything she had built in her life, including her career, for something as uncertain as love? Could she really allow herself to fall for him? That night, as she sat beside Grant in his private room, she looked at him and realized how far they had come. It had been months since he had woken up from the coma, and yet the journey they had embarked on felt like it had only just begun. She had watched him go from a man who couldn't even speak, to someone who was now active and alert, planning for the future. And with every step he took towards recovery, he was also taking steps into her heart. "Grant," Anna said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, "we need to talk." His eyes flickered with concern, but he nodded, his attention fully on her. "What's on your mind?" he asked. His voice was gentle, and there was an understanding in his eyes that made her feel like he truly saw her. Anna took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. "I've been thinking a lot lately," she began, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "About everything. About us." Grant's expression softened, and he reached for her hand. "Anna, you don't have to be afraid to talk to me. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." The warmth of his touch calmed her, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to relax. She looked at him, really looked at him, and realized that this was the man who had saved her heart as much as she had saved his body. "Grant," she said, her voice shaking with emotion, "I care about you, more than I've ever cared about anyone, and I can't pretend anymore that this is just about you being my patient." She paused, trying to find the words to express everything she had been feeling. "I know this is complicated, and I know it's probably not the right time, but I can't ignore it. I've fallen for you." There was a long silence between them, and for a moment, Anna was afraid she had said too much. But then Grant spoke, his voice full of conviction. "I care about you too, Anna, more than you could ever imagine." The sincerity in his words made her heart swell, and she felt a tear slip down her cheek. She had been holding on to these feelings for so long, too afraid to admit them, but now that they were out in the open, it felt like a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. Grant gently wiped away her tear, his thumb brushing her cheek in the most tender way. "You're right," he said softly. "This isn't the right time, but that doesn't mean we can't make it work. We've both been through so much, and I think we deserve to see where this could go." Anna looked at him, her heart racing, and for the first time in a long while she felt a sense of hope. "Do you really think we could make it work?" she asked quietly. Grant smiled, a slow, reassuring smile. "I do. I believe in us." And in that moment, Anna realized that this was what she had been waiting for. The journey ahead would not be easy, and there would be obstacles they would have to face. But with Grant by her side, she knew she was ready to take that first step. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to embrace it. The past months had been a whirlwind, filled with pain and recovery, but it had also brought them closer together in a way neither of them had expected. As they sat there, their hands intertwined, Anna knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning of their story, and whatever came next, they would face it together. I know that the moment Anna and Grant had shared in his hospital room was only the beginning of something deeper, but they both knew there were challenges ahead. They had crossed a line, stepping into uncharted territory where their professional roles blurred with personal feelings. Despite their confessions, there were still lingering doubts and fears that both needed to address before they could move forward. As the days went by, their bond grew stronger, but so did the complexity of their situation. Anna couldn't deny that she was falling for him harder with each passing day, but she still hesitated. Her fears were rooted in her past experiences. She had never allowed herself to get close to anyone, never opened her heart fully, and now she found herself on the edge of something she wasn't sure she was ready for. Grant, on the other hand, was no longer the man he had been when he first arrived at the hospital. He was different, stronger, more aware, and deeply grateful for the second chance at life. But even he couldn't shake the feeling that things were moving too fast, that they hadn't yet fully explored the consequences of their growing closeness. One evening, after another long day of Grant's therapy and Anna's shift, they sat together in his room. The soft glow of the bedside lamp cast a warm light over them, the silence between them comfortable but thick with unspoken words. Grant looked at her, his gaze steady, and Anna felt her heart race. It was like he could see right through her, like he knew the internal battle she was fighting. "Anna," he said, breaking the silence. His voice was low, full of warmth, yet there was a hint of something heavier beneath. "I know we've been through a lot, and I'm grateful for everything you've done for me, but are you sure about this?" His words hung in the air, and Anna froze. She had been waiting for this moment, the one where they would finally talk about the future. The uncertainty was always there, lurking just beneath the surface, and now it was finally time to confront it. She took a deep breath, trying to steady her emotions. "I am sure," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Grant nodded, his expression serious, but there was a softness in his eyes that reassured her. "I feel the same way. But we both know that this is complicated. It's not just about us. There are people who will have their opinions, people who might not understand." Anna looked down at their hands, now resting together on the bed. She couldn't help but feel the weight of his words. She had spent her entire life trying to avoid conflict, trying to keep everything neat and orderly, but now nothing felt neat or ordered. "I know," she said softly. "But sometimes I think we deserve a chance. A real chance." Grant was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter, filled with vulnerability. "I'm scared, Anna. I won't lie to you. I don't want to hurt you. You've done so much for me, and I don't want to risk it all." Anna's heart clenched at his words. She could see the fear in his eyes, the hesitation, and for the first time, she realized that they were both standing on the edge of something fragile. They had both fought so hard to get here, and now they had to decide if they were ready to take the next step. "Grant, I've spent my whole life being afraid," Anna said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Afraid of getting too close, of opening myself up to someone. But with you, I don't feel that fear anymore. You've made me feel things I've never allowed myself to feel before. I can't walk away from that." The words tumbled out before she could stop them, and she felt a weight lift off her shoulders as she spoke. She had been holding on to these feelings for so long, afraid to admit them even to herself. But now, in this moment, she knew that she couldn't keep them inside any longer. Grant reached out, gently cupping her face in his hands. He looked at her with such intensity, his eyes full of admiration and something deeper, something more profound. "I feel the same way, Anna," he said softly. "And I won't run from it. I promise you that." In that moment, everything felt clear. The uncertainty, the fear, the doubt, it all faded away, leaving only the truth. They had both found something in each other that they hadn't even known they were looking for, and now they had to decide what to do with it. It wouldn't be easy, and it wouldn't be perfect, but they were ready to face it together. Anna smiled, her heart swelling with love for the man who had once been a stranger, but who was now the person she couldn't imagine her life without. "We'll figure it out, Grant. Together." And as they sat there, holding each other close, Anna knew that the future was still uncertain. But for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid to see where it would take them. I know that the decision Anna and Grant had made to face their feelings was not the end of their journey, but just the beginning of something that neither of them could have predicted. In the weeks that followed, they both knew that they had taken the first step into uncharted waters. The connection between them had deepened, and though the road ahead was uncertain, the one thing they both understood was that they were in this together. There were no guarantees, no promises that everything would be smooth, but the trust they had built in each other was stronger than ever. Grant, who had once been a man who hid behind the walls of his wealth and power, was now open, vulnerable, and deeply invested in their relationship. Anna, who had spent most of her life avoiding deep emotional connections, found herself falling for him in ways she never thought possible. Yet, as much as they had grown closer, they both knew that outside forces might try to pull them apart. Anna had always been cautious. She had spent years focusing on her career, keeping her emotions locked away to protect herself from potential heartbreak. But with Grant, she had learned to let go, to trust again. However, she couldn't ignore the reality of the situation. People in the hospital, her colleagues, and even her friends would have their opinions. What would they say when they found out about her relationship with Grant? Would they judge her for getting so close to a former patient? Could she continue her work at the hospital without everyone knowing her personal life? As Anna wrestled with these thoughts, she realized that no matter what happened, she couldn't let fear dictate her future. She had already made the hardest decision by allowing herself to fall in love with him, and now she needed to be brave enough to let the world know. One day, as Anna and Grant sat together in his room, the subject of their future came up again. The air between them was thick with the weight of their unspoken thoughts, but this time it was different. There was no hesitation, no fear of what might happen next. They were ready to face it together. "Anna," Grant said, his voice steady but full of emotion, "I've been thinking about everything. About us, and about the life we're going to build together. I want to make sure we're on the same page. We've been through so much already, and I don't want to let anything get in the way of what we have." Anna turned to him, her heart swelling with love for him. She had been waiting for this moment, waiting to finally discuss their future, and now, as she looked into his eyes, she knew that this was it. "I want that too," she said softly. "I want to build a life with you, Grant. But we both know it won't be easy. There will be challenges, people who won't understand, situations that will make us question everything. But I believe in us. I believe in what we have." Grant nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. "I know it won't be easy, but I'm ready to face whatever comes our way. I've spent too long living in the shadows, hiding from my emotions, and I won't let that happen again. I want to be with you, Anna. And I want to build a future that's filled with love, trust, and happiness." Anna's heart felt like it was about to burst. She had spent so long trying to protect herself, trying to keep her distance, but now, with Grant, she knew that this was where she belonged. The past few months had been nothing short of transformative for both of them. They had both healed in different ways. Grant had regained his strength and found the courage to be vulnerable, and Anna had learned to open her heart to someone who truly cared for her. They were no longer two people caught in a moment of uncertainty. They had become a team, and together they knew they could face anything. As Anna took his hand in hers, she realized just how far they had come. From the moment he had first woken up in the hospital, to the days they had spent getting to know each other, they had created something beautiful, a bond that was built on trust, understanding, and unconditional support. The future was still uncertain, but they were ready to face it. They had each other, and that was all that mattered. "We can do this," Anna said, her voice full of conviction. "Whatever comes our way, we will face it together, and we'll make it work." Grant smiled, his eyes shining with pride. "Together," he echoed, and with that, they knew that no matter what obstacles lay ahead, they were ready to tackle them as a team. The road would be tough, but it would also be filled with love, and that was all they needed to keep moving forward. I know that as Anna and Grant moved forward with their new relationship, they couldn't help but feel a deep sense of uncertainty and excitement at the same time. They had both been through so much already, and they knew that life wouldn't suddenly become perfect just because they had decided to take the next step. There would still be challenges, still moments of doubt. But they were no longer afraid of what lay ahead. The love they had for each other was strong enough to overcome whatever obstacles came their way. Weeks passed, and their bond only grew stronger. Anna found herself looking forward to each day with Grant, even as they navigated the ups and downs of their new life together. It wasn't always easy, but they were committed to each other. And that commitment made all the difference. It was one evening, as they sat together in the quiet of Grant's living room, that he finally turned to Anna with a look of complete sincerity. "Anna," he said softly, his voice steady and warm, "I know we've talked about our future, but I want to make sure you know how much you mean to me. You've given me more than I ever expected, more than I ever thought I deserved. You've been my strength, my support, and now I want to do the same for you." Anna's heart fluttered as she looked into his eyes, feeling the love and admiration radiating from him. "You've already done so much, Grant," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "You've changed my life. You've taught me to believe in love again, in a way I never thought was possible." Grant smiled, his eyes softening as he took her hand in his. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Anna. I want to build a future together, one where we both find happiness, where we both have the chance to grow and create something beautiful." Anna's heart swelled with emotion. She had never imagined that she would find someone like Grant, someone who cared for her so deeply and unconditionally. She had spent so long running from love, afraid to open her heart, but now she realized that she was ready to embrace it fully. She had found her home in him. "I want that too, Grant," she said, tears welling up in her eyes. "I want to be with you, for always." Grant gently wiped away the tear that slipped down her cheek, his touch tender and full of love. "Then let's make it official," he said with a smile that made Anna's heart race. "Let's create a life together, one that's full of love, trust, and everything we've always wanted." Anna looked at him, her heart overflowing with joy and gratitude. She had never imagined her life would lead her to this moment, but now that she was here, she couldn't imagine being anywhere else. She nodded, her smile matching his. "Yes," she whispered. "Let's do it." And in that moment, with the world outside, their little bubble fading into the background, Anna and Grant knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together. They had already come so far, and now, with their love as their guide, they were ready to take on the world. The journey they had begun, one full of challenges, growth, and love, was just beginning. They didn't know what would come next, but they knew they would be able to handle it, as long as they had each other. They were finally ready to embrace their future, together, and nothing could stop them now. And as the days passed, as they worked towards building their life, their bond remained unshakable, their love unwavering. Together, Anna and Grant created a life filled with joy, laughter, and the kind of love that can only come from two people who had fought for each other and for their happiness. The world outside would always have its challenges, but inside, they had found something far stronger: the power of love, the strength of commitment, and the peace of knowing they were truly home in each other's arms.